Hey,
Hey,
get
Rex.
focused
Hey,
here.
Rex.
Yeah, what'd you think?
That's so good, James. Thank you. Gosh, I
Oh,
enjoyed
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that
insightful.
was fun. I appreciate that.
I liked the analogy of like 100 years ago, dentistry and becoming more of a preventative thing, and the relationship
Yeah.
healthcare needs to become like that. That was very relatable. I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so there's an interesting story in there, right? Because what we discovered is that regular dental checkups are a thing that originally was experimented with in the Army. So early, in the early 1940s, the Army was recognizing that one of the main reasons they were having a hard time keeping soldiers healthy was because of their dental health and, well, basically lack of dental health, right? So they just started experimenting with this idea of regular checkups and discovered through that, like, how much of a difference it made. And then it just sort of like spread out from the Army to the rest of the country and then the rest of the world, right? And I think that's so, and at Clark University, where I'm from, we have a wall that's, all the walls of this one room, all of the PhD graduates since the like 1800s. And like, they don't start smiling and showing their teeth until about 1955.
Really?
So it wasn't until the advent of like regular dental checkups that people had teeth they were proud enough to show. Right.
Is that why
Yeah.
in ancestry pictures, right?
Yes.
My ancestors are not smiling.
They're not smiling because they don't have teeth.
Oh my goodness!
Or the teeth they have, they don't want to show you, right? And I think, again, that's what we're trying to have the same effect when it comes to relationship health, right? Like,
Well,
can we look back in the same way and think, God, can you imagine? That's the reason that people just expected for the divorce rate to be so high.
Yeah.
it's kind of an advanced thought, even. So sorry, Rex, for the 1940s, is that something with your dental health goes to the rest of your body? That's pretty advanced, even.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't just stay in the oral cavity. Anyway, good for the Army.
That it's related to a lot of things. And yeah, you just said that like people just expected their teeth to, maybe I'll have a couple when I'm 50 rattling around up there.
Yeah.
But there is this, that's kind of creeping into the marriage relationships where people just expect, I'll probably get married 2 or 3 times in my life. Just hop from person to person. What are the effects, though, that people may not be aware of? That if things aren't going well in your relationship, how is that affecting your productivity at home, as a parent, at work?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it really is pervasive. It's everywhere, right? So, for example, one of the things that we've shown in our research is that just doing a checkup, like a relationship checkup, has the same effect in terms of alleviating the symptoms of depression as doing CBT and like Prozac, right? So a lot of why people are suffering from depressive symptoms is because of things that are going on in their relationship. And yet we treat it as though it's an individual issue. There's a bunch of really great work that Janet Kiecolt-Glaser has done that's shown that couples in distressed relationships have downregulated immune systems. So like if you're in a relationship that's causing you a lot of distress, your immune system doesn't function as effectively, and actually you age more quickly. You're more likely to actually add the kind of weight that is a result of having too much cortisol in your system, right? So like relationship distress actually is a stressor, and stress is mediated by all the stress hormones, cortisol, the catecholamines, right? Adrenaline, and those are all corrosive to our physical system, right? So we actually, you will live not just happier, but longer in a more satisfying relationship. And then all of that then plays into our productivity at work, right? If you're more likely to get sick, then you're going to have more sick days. If you're going to stay sicker longer, right, because of my relationship isn't doing well, then you're going to spend more time away from work. And if you're distracted by the emotional suffering in your relationship, then you can't focus at work, right? And when things are going well at home, things go well at work.
Yeah, I was just going to, as you were saying that, the word focus popped in my head, and then you mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, that's because if you're not happy, you just can't focus. If you're not, or at least content, you can't focus. I'm wondering, like, how can we make this more obvious to people? Like, I mean, if it's obvious that, your teeth are kind of an indication of your health, physical health, how can we make people more aware of, like, okay, if your relationships aren't well, that, this is going to affect everything. I mean, I think depression is probably a big part of it. We see isn't there like an increase in depression in the last 5 or 6 decades?
Yeah, for sure. Not only that, one of the reasons that both the Department of Defense and the Department of Veteran Affairs is so interested in the stuff that we're doing is the connection between relationship health and suicidality, right? And that like 80% of completed suicides where they left a note, the note mentioned something about an intimate relationship. And the military and the Veterans Administration are right now laser focused on trying to drive down the rate of suicide in active duty service members and veterans. And they are smart enough to begin to recognize the role that relationship health plays in that. So how do we get, to your question, Rex, like how do we get people thinking about this and recognizing this? I think things like this podcast, right? And the more providers, the more educators that we have that are, singing from this hymn book, right? Because that's the $1 million question, right? Is right now people don't think about it in these terms, and they have to start thinking about it in those terms. And what's going to be the tipping point, right? Like what we're hoping for is that as we start to talk more and more about this, there will be a point at which it just goes viral. But we're not there yet. And I think that doing this sort of thing is part of that, getting that word out, right? And starting to change the way people think.
I completely agree. What are I think you kind of already have mentioned this, but what are the consequences of totally ignoring this? What does this affect? I mean, I would think a myriad of things.
It's virtually everything, right? Like if you look into the research literature, it's like pick a mental health diagnosis and how the person's relationship is doing is affecting it. It's affecting its onset and offset, and it's affecting the effectiveness of the treatment. In fact, I have a colleague who studies couples therapy for in the context of substance abuse treatment, and he's like what he's come to the conclusion is that to ignore the relationship when you're doing substance abuse treatment is tantamount to what's the word I'm looking for? Mistreatment, basically, right? Yes. Not doing your job.
That sounds like Robert Navarra. Is that who that is?
It could be. Yep, that sounds right.
Okay, yes.
Sounds right.
Yeah, we've had him on. It's excellent. That's just really impressive, isn't it? That insight.
And again, all the physical health issues as well. One of the places where there's a lot of focus right now is maternal mental health and maternal physical and emotional well-being across the transition to parenthood. And again, that tends to be focused on at the level of mom. And there's just not enough focus on the quality of the relationship and the support that the relationship provides across that transition. And that transition is rough on relationships, like predictably rough on relationships. But we don't have anything that's like automatically in place to help inoculate couples across that transition. And the things that we do have in place, it just haven't become as easily accessible as they need to be. So yeah, I mean that, the main thing there is, helping, I think like we said at sort of the top of our conversation today, helping thought leaders, helping legislators really start to understand what the research has already shown us, right? Which is that, the quality of our relationship health affects everything.
Is there anything? I kind of have an idea what I'm asking, or a destination, but is there anything that is keeping people or separating people, getting at greater than Quill's distance, as you mentioned, that's making people more secluded and drawn away from others? I would think I know what the answer might be, but it just seems to be a growing problem now in our culture.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think sometimes the way I think about this is that one of the most significant things that we aren't taught in school or in any kind of educational context is what I talk about as emotion skills, right? And it's like how to behave skillfully in the context of a strong emotion. And I think that we're just sort of left to our own devices. When I'm sad, when I'm angry, when I'm lonely, when I'm jealous, right? Like what I do is just what I've sort of observed other people do, what I've picked up over the course of my life, but I haven't learned from my phone, right? Right. And no one's ever taught me how to be both angry and relationally skillful at the same time, how to be hurt and relationally skillful at the same time, how to be lonely and relationally skillful at the same time, how to be jealous and relationally skillful at the same time. I just react, right? And we cause so much harm from that place of reactivity, but nobody's teaching us how to do it any better.
That is, I feel like one of the biggest challenges as humans. Mm-hmm. Is you can be stressed, you can be frustrated, you can be hurt, but you can still be kind. Mm-hmm. You know, about those two things can exist. You don't have to be mean when you are angry.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's very difficult and challenging because you kind of lose it, right? The prefrontal cortex and gets hijacked and everything. But man, learning that skill or to pause, I can still be kind even though I'm upset about something.
Right. And it's as you sort of allude to there, it is incredibly emotionally counterintuitive in the moment. Yeah. And I think it's right in that spot. That's where I'm focusing when I think about relationships as a spiritual practice. It is right in that moment when something has to matter more to you than the reaction that's coming up.
Yeah.
I was thinking that same thing. The perfect example would be, in religion. I don't know how specific I can get there, but there are some individuals who have suffered incredibly and still responded with dignity and treating people with dignity. And that is a very, like you said, it's difficult to not, like Dave has said this before, be a responder rather than a reactor.
Yeah. Right. And I think the key in there is that in that moment, something like I have to be connected to something that is bigger than, have to be connected to something that matters more to me than protecting my ego, right? Than going with my reactive self. And to be able to access that capacity to respond means we have to be able to connect to that thing.
I love brilliant. Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave it off here. I don't think it can get better than that.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a few minutes to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. When you hit the like button and leave a comment, your feedback helps us improve the show. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and connect with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and on Facebook at Stronger Marriage. Be sure to share with us what topics you want us to explore or what you loved about today's episode. If you want even more resources to improve your relationship connection, visit our website at strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producers Rex Polanis and Alexis Alcott and the team at Utah State University. And you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission